and welcome to the school board meeting for the Carson City School District. We will begin with a flag salute by Stacy Wilkie-McCullough.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item 2, adoption of the agenda as submitted for possible action.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Ron and seconded by
I'll take it.
Ryan. They're still fighting over it. So do we have any further discussion on the agenda or any public comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Agenda item 3, superintendent's report for information only. Mr. Stokes.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. It's good to be with you this evening. I don't have a lot for you this evening, but did want to report that we are settling into the summer vacation. Most of our administrators who are at the elementary level have now moved along and are simply hiring and doing those daily activities that will prepare them for the coming school year. We're receiving final reports on legislative conditions after the last session and are beginning to put together how those laws will impact our school district so that we can share that information with our administrators and our teachers in the coming school year. We're also working relatively closely with our counterparts at the city as we talk about growth and as we talk about some of the potential developments that are in the area and the impact that obviously they're going to have on the schools. So with that, I will end my report. Thank you, Mrs. Crossman.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 4, board reports or board member comments for information only. Trustee Carini. Okay, Trustee Casiopo. Trustee Walker. Trustee Swerzik. Trustee Wilkie.
Yeah, you thought this was going to be quick. No such luck. I had an NAAA meeting last week. The realignment is going to be done in January of 18. North Valley is dropping down from the 4A to the 3A in all sports. Worcester is coming up in football. They'd been 3A in football and 4A in all the other sports, but it screwed up the 3A, so they've moved the football back into the 4A until realignment, which should solve the problem that they have at football. And they wanted to give a big thanks to Carson for hosting the baseball, track and field, and state swimming and diving. They just love our facilities. They think they're great. And it's just so neat to sit in those meetings and hear people talk about our schools being so great. And so I want to thank all the staff and all the volunteers that worked with those to make us look so good. Because of the calendar starts a week earlier, they could move up games a week earlier, but there didn't seem to be a lot of interest in that. And then on to NASB. Just to let you know, Erin Craner from Clark County will be leaving in August. She's stepping down. She's going to law school. She's going to work with the transgender and the religion part of it and get her degree in law school. So we're sad to see her go, very, very sad to see her go. It's going to be a huge hole. So, but Laurel will fill it, so we'll be okay. We had a little rundown on legislation on our phone call last night. Just to let you know, the board training bill that passed, that's in your first and your third year of your term. And Dawn, that would be the first year that you're appointed. We're looking to the LCB to make sure that that's true, but that's what we read out of it. You must have at least 6 hours in the areas that they specified in the bill. And if you're going to the NASB trainings, you'll be able to get it with no problem at all. And if you don't make any of the NASB trainings except November, you're good to go. And then we're also looking at, there's other alternatives other than NASB. There's Pool Pack, you can do it online. And then the clerk is going to be required to send in a report at the end of the year to NDA or NDE to let them know who has and who hasn't. They haven't said if there's any ramifications if you don't do it. But one of the reasons this bill did get passed and appointed school board didn't is because we came to the board or came to the legislature and said we're willing to have training, and that was kind of the twofold for not getting appointed. So kind of keep that in mind. If you don't go to training, we could all be appointed. And then, just, you know, and then they went over the teacher's evaluation, which I'll bring up in future agenda items. I'd like to kind of see how that goes. And just a reminder, nomination forms, I have 3 filled out and should be in pre-draft form for the next meeting for you guys to look over and make changes. And if you guys can think of anybody else in those, we're trying really hard to get them in every category. But instead of the 15th, I'd like them the 4th because we have a NASB meeting. And then Renee wouldn't have to fax them. I could just take them and hand them to them. So that would be a lot less. The 4th of August. That would be a lot less for anybody to handle. And then our next meeting is August 4th and 5th with professional development on the 5th. And that's all I have to report.
Thank you, Trustee Wilkie. Trustee Green? Okay, and I could see you looking a little questioning, Trustee Carini, about the NASB nominations, and that is at the annual conference in November. NASB gives awards to Innovative Educator of the Year, Secondary Administrator.
We had Administrator of the Year last year with Dr. Perdere.
District level Administrator.
We had Veteran School Board Member with Mr. Swarzik. So I'll send out, since you are new, I'll just send you out the packet so you can see what things we have, the terms.
Is that August 5th you talked about? Is that training?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, August 5th is training.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is that in Reno? Or?
It's in Reno at the Hyatt.
Okay, and then just my only comment on that was, you've already got 3 drafted. Did we want any other nominations? Do we want the individual board members to draft them? Do we want them sent, you know, to
We want
someone
all
to
the help we can
collect?
get.
Okay,
And then we have a little bit of summer staff. Some of the principals are working on their teams, like Carson Middle School. So if there's somebody at Carson Middle School you're thinking, I talked to Mr. Sadler the other day, and he's willing to put something together there.
okay.
So individuals until we have to pass it off to staff. But I'm hoping that we could actually do this by ourselves this time, so there'd be less work for
And I
Renee.
was on the committee making the selections for the awards last year, and one thing that is, it's not required, you're only required to have a few trustees sign it, but when the entire board signs a nomination for one of the awards, that is something that they do look at when it comes close. So, just.
So I'll bring those sheets the last meeting in April, and you guys can sign off on them, even if we don't have them completely done. At least that part will be good.
Okay, we'll go ahead. Do we have any other comments or discussions on our board reports? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 5, association reports for discussion only. Do we have any association reports here? Nope, because it's summertime. We will go ahead and move on to agenda item 6, public comment. Do we have anyone here interested in giving public comment? If not, I am going to go ahead and not read everything and just let you know that will be an opportunity for public comment at each agenda item as we discuss it as well. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 7, presentation and possible action to approve the renewal of property casualty insurance package with Nevada Public Agency Insurance Pool in the amount of $516,065.64, self-insurance bond in the amount of $2,120, and excess workers' compensation policy with State National Insurance Company in the amount of $39,104 for July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2018, for possible action. Mrs. Ann Sear and Ryan Garaventa. Sorry if I...
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Good evening, trustees, staff, member of the public. We do have Mr. Garaventa here from Alpine Insurance. He's going to give us a brief overview of the insurance program and the renewal. And then we also have Mike Rebeletti here from Pool Pact, and he'd like to just give us a brief overview of the types of services that we benefit from through our membership in the pool. Right.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Good to see you. Thanks for having me again. Once again, the pool has put a very good program together, a ton of coverage. Price is very similar to last year. Coverage is very similar to last year. Again, higher limits than you could ever afford on your own, and that's exactly why the pool does such a good job of putting together what they do. Also, we've brought out your self-insured reinsurance product and your bond that needs to be filed with the state. Pricing is very similar to last year on that as well. If there's anything you'd like to know from me, I welcome it. And again, the pool is here to share with us as well.
Do we have any questions? Trustee Sorzak.
On the property limits, just help me out here.
Okay.
We got a maximum of $300 million per loss. But then on the sublimits, can you tell me what, like equipment breakdown, we've got $100 million per loss. Explain a little bit explain what equipment breakdown would be that would get us to that level.
Well, again, and if you'd like to come up and share this with me, feel free. But again, equipment breakdown is sudden and accidental breakdown of equipment, not wear and tear, but coverage to replace that equipment and any loss associated with it as far as costs that go along with the equipment breakdown.
Yeah, we raise the limits whenever we can because it may not just be one entity, it may be 10 entities, so that these limits are for the whole pool. It's for the entire.
Oh, okay, not just for the
Not
district.
just for each entity, this is for every member. So it might be in an aggregate where you have multiple incidents that's throughout the state that would be adding up to that limit.
Think of like a major heat wave with massive amounts of HVAC running, and we could see several districts have problems all at once, and so it's a pooled limit.
Yeah, and since we're in an earthquake zone, that would be an excellent example where a major earthquake could actually cause our pool to get up to the limits because we have so many entities in the western Nevada.
Okay. Student accident coverage. Didn't we have this last year? I mean, you got the asterisk to indicate that this is something new. Is it something? It's not new, because I think we had this last year, didn't we?
You did.
New in the relative form that it's only the second year that we have it.
Yeah, but you get a footnote, like it says here, I don't know, I read it someplace that, well, it didn't matter. I mean, this is the second year and we're.
It is the second year,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, we're okay there.
Yeah.
Okay, and then let's go on to the last page. And that's the renewal quotes for, I guess, the workers' comp. And that's from State National Insurance Company.
Correct.
Okay, and as we go down, what is Star Insurance Company then? Is that something else?
I'm sorry, I don't see where you're looking.
Well, go on the same page.
Okay.
The renewal quotes, and go down to, you got,
It's number 4
Four.
under terms and conditions.
Oh, I'm sorry, this was a typo from Loveland and Smart, and we may not have sent out another one. Star and State National are the same entity.
Oh.
One assumed the other, and so I'm sorry.
okay, and the last item, what is the cash flow protection endorsement?
The cash flow protection endorsement means that if you have a major claim and you have your $400,000 self-insured retention, you don't have to assume that in year one. They separate it out over 3 years. So all it is an out-of-pocket savings to the school district, so that if there was ever a point that we got up to that deductible amount, you don't have to come out of pocket on it immediately. They'll separate it out over three years.
And what do we pay for that?
It's less than $1,000 a year. And again, the self-insured work comp program has performed very well again this year, like the years leading up to it. That's why we're still seeing that the premium amounts are lower than all other markets, simply because you performed well and have performed well for a number of years.
Graphs that you put on the trends and severity total by year and on and on and on. And, it shows a continual downward trend for The pool,
For the pool overall, correct.
does that mean our rates keep going down? Or they what? Or they keep going up?
Well, what it means is the pricing on the pool product overall has continued to not rise, and in some cases has lowered, and in some cases, the pool's been able to provide more coverage at a similar price, simply because the pool's performed well.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And why do you think that is? That
Pardon me?
that the pool members of, is everybody taking, I mean, I
Yes,
know
and-
our district takes precautions so that, and
think
training.
I think that's exactly right. The members are committed, and the members are active. And I think that the pool is committed and active in conjunction with that.
Yes, we have, well, as you know, we have the, what we call PRI, Public Resource, and that's for the HR support. So we take a very active role on that measure, so the partners get out to each entity to help mitigate the, any potential loss or liability loss for concerning human resource. We are adding more to our risk management programs, but we have a very comprehensive list of risk management products. Fortunately, we were able to provide a grant to the Carson City School District to help provide for your audio-visual upgrades. And that was a very substantial grant. So we do those grants because as a risk management tool, so that's a way of us. And we're going to have a loss control meeting in July, and it's a retreat to help have future direction over a grant program and what we're going to target for the grant monies. So that's another program. Another program that we're initiating this year that's actually a total benefit to the entities is an IT cyber assessment that's being provided to all of our members through a gentleman by the name of Tony Rusi, who Ann knows quite well, but we have initiated it. Right now we've had 6 counties it's been assessed already, and we're going to be initiating it for the school district. So we'll be contacting staff to arrange that, hopefully this fall or this winter. We haven't done any school districts, but we are starting school districts next month. And again, that product itself is anywhere, depending on the size of the area, that product can be a value of anywhere from $20,000 to $40,000. And then we're doing that as a benefit to the members.
And you guys did that with our safety, the safety surveys that we had with the guy that wrote the book on safety. Wasn't that through Pool Pack? Yeah, last year. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So that was last year. So we did appreciate that. That brought out a lot of good stuff and knew that we were doing a lot of stuff right, which was nice to see. But we do appreciate you guys taking on those things, and I'm glad to hear that there's more coming for us. So I appreciate that.
School bus training, school bus driving training. We sponsored provided all of the school transportation directors with the comprehensive CD that's produced by one of the national school bus safety companies. So we're more than happy to, on our site, on the Pool Pack site, you can go in and see all of these programs. E-learning, if you want a special program that you want put on the e-learning site for all of your employees, or any board member that wants access, just contact us, get on the site. You can go in and explore the entire site, but it's for members, so you do have to have a sign-on. So you can see what risk management tools we have on that on the site. So I didn't know if you really wanted to go through each item that we're doing, but for a comprehensive list.
What?
We want to use the whole 20 minutes here.
But, yeah, it's a summer meeting.
Trustee Casiopo.
I was just curious, under the student accident coverage, the first line, I guess my question is, it says when school's in session while participating in a school-sponsored activity, is that calendar year wide? Like, we just had some kids go to a health occupations national competition in Florida. It was after the school year ended. Would that group be covered in this?
I would say yes, because it's any activity that's sponsored by the school. So there's not a time period that is,
Okay, so as long as it's a school-sponsored activity and they're going somewhere or otherwise, those groups would be covered?
Yes.
Okay.
It is being utilized I mean, at the beginning of last year, we had, it's like when you start anything new, there's a little bit of confusion on how it's deployed, what it really means. So yeah, the longer we have it, the more people get used to it. So it is being utilized. So we want to get it utilized more, get your money's worth out of it.
And just, I was just reading that asterisk that you noticed earlier on the student accident coverage, Ron, and that's coverage expansion provided by the pool at no charge to members. So I think that is one of the benefits that we've seen by having our decrease in claims. So, do we have any other further questions or comments?
Just did our costs go up or down as a school district? Do you,
It's a
Andrew, do you know?
You can't
Up,
flag it.
up a little?
two,
Okay. Well worth
it
it.
is
About 2%.
It's about 2%.
approximately about 2.5%. And what drove one of the reasons that the increase was driven this year was the casualty cost on our reinsurance side. Property rates were very flat. We were able to negotiate good property rates with Lloyd's of London. They maintained, they had a slight increase, even though they wanted to increase it more, like they all do, but we negotiated it so that it was just basically a flat increase for our property coverage. But the casualty side there was an increase on the national level on what we have to pay for the reinsurance. So that basically drove the 2.5%.
And this is an action item, if anyone would be interested in making a motion. Unless you have more questions before we get to that.
I can make a motion. I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees approve as submitted the proposed renewal of property casualty insurance package with Nevada Public Agency Insurance Pool in the amount of $516,065.64, self-insurance bond in the amount of $2,120, and excess workers' compensation policy with the State National Insurance Company in the amount of $39,104 for July 1, 2017 through June 30th, 2018.
Okay, motion by Joe, seconded by Mike. Do we have any further comments or discussion? Any public comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, the motion carries. And we'll move on to agenda item 8, approval of the emergency operations plan for the Carson City School District for the 2017-2018 school year for possible action. And Sear.
Thank you. So I think I might have actually requested that this item was agendized for possible action when it's probably more of a discussion item. So I'll just give you a brief update on the activities of the Emergency Operations Development Committee. Trustee Walker joined us on that committee this year. We're happy to have him working with us. The committee is required annually to review the annual plan, look at any new changes, requirements, and laws, and update the plan as necessary. And they have met on a number of occasions and have made those adjustments to the plan as required in statute, and have completed their review of the plan, and we are prepared to post notice of compliance at any of the sites. So just to give you an update on the activities of that committee. So any questions for me?
Do we have any questions from the board?
Well, and I know this is on the plan, but the actual meetings for the primary players that are involved, how often is that done?
We meet about 4 times a year, just depending on how much work needs to be done. Last year, we met, I want to say 6 times, if I want to look back and look at the minutes of their meetings. But of course, we had Mr. K involved with a hazard and vulnerability study. We had to review those results. The plan was completely rewritten. So there was a lot of work done last year, and there really wasn't a lot to do with the plan this year, other than making the adjustment for the requirement for suicide planning.
But we still coordinate with the city.
Yes,
They're on
yes,
that
the plan is,
committee.
Yeah, they're on
the
that-
plan
yeah.
is reviewed by the county emergency manager, the sheriff's department, Carson Behavioral Health, all of our community partners are involved, and in fact have a seat on that committee.
Do we have any further questions or comments? And I'm guess it's for possible action, but if there's no action to be taken, we don't need to take any action. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Go ahead and move on to agenda item 9, presentation of the final Race to the Top grant report to include information associated with the strategic plan Empower Carson City 2022. For discussion only, Dr. Steve Perdier.
Thank you, President Crossman, members of the board. It is my pleasure to be here today, 5.5 years after we've started. So we have a lot to celebrate and a lot to report in the changes in our particular practices. There we go. So in 2012, just about the same time we were doing our development for our Race to the Top application, we were near the end of our strategic planning process and the implementation of our first strategic plan. And I want to thank Mr. Swarzik because that work that he had done throughout the community had brought us together. If you were in that first room, there was probably, that first time when we started that strategic planning meeting, there was probably 150 people in the room, and 75 of those people were not very happy with the Carson City School District. And they had a lot of expectations for our district that they felt we were not meeting. And from that came an exceptional plan that really laid the foundation for the work we did in the next 5 years, but also provided us an impetus to do a great application for Race to the Top, which, as you know, was the nation's top application. Each one of these areas became central to our work over the last 5 years, and we've made significant improvements in all of those. In most of those areas, I would say we still have a little bit more to go, of course, in all of them as well, which is why that plan was updated again for our work over the next 5 years. Sorry this is hard to see, but I will kind of go over the key components there. This again is our demographic makeup. So as you can see the high points there, they may be a little bit hard to read, but in essence that Hispanic group is 42% of our district, 49% of our district is white, 56% of our district is free and reduced lunch, 18% is English language learners, and 14% are IEP, along with all the other important subgroups that we have in our district make up our district. I think one of the key issues we do want to recognize, and I have used part of this presentation before, is that 56% free and reduced lunch is a very large number. It's higher than the surrounding districts around us, meaning that our students are facing additional challenges when they come to school for us. And so the work and effort of our teachers and our organization to move those kids is working, and we just want to recognize that extra work and that we are able to move kids no matter what their background.
Is that 56% higher than the state average?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
Sorry. I do know it's higher than our surrounding counties. So if we think about what was going on in the Carson City School District in terms of our Race to the Top application, I mean, when we would walk from class to class, and I know many of you have heard this story before, but when we walk from class to class, if I would go to an English 1 class or an Algebra 1 class, and Algebra 1 was taught on all 4 campuses, that class was, although there was a general plan for that class, every class was different. The expectations were different, the work that was required was different, the assessments were different, the way they were measured were different. In essence, the quality of your educational experience really laid heavily on the individual teacher working as an independent contractor. And that is no longer the case. We now have a system that is much different. When we go from Algebra 1 class to Algebra 1 class, or English 1 or English 2 or AP, government, those courses, when they're repeated, have the same set of high expectations no matter who your teacher is. Now, how that teacher carries you along the learning pathway is going to vary, but the assessments are common and the expectations are set high for all students. If we look back in 2012, 1 in 4 students who entered Carson High School did not graduate. 25 to 40% of every student that walked in any middle school or high school building had at least 1 F at all times. As I just mentioned, there was no common curriculum or assessment. There was no way of tracking student mastery other than the grades the teacher recorded in the grade book. And although there's some very good information in those grades, it doesn't tell you specifically what a student can know and be able to do within a unit of study. So it wasn't enough information. 40% of our students were not enrolled in career and college readiness. In other words, their math wasn't high enough, their English wasn't high enough, so their curriculum pathway opportunities were not in place for them to be college and career ready. They had no chance. So in 2012, when they came to us, if they were in that 40%, they had no chance of meeting that college ready requirement because their academic expectations and pathway wasn't high enough for them, nor were they ready for it. There's a number there, it's 2014. Even though that's a little bit farther down the ladder, I want to bring this in because that is when the state brought in its CTE requirements where kids had to pass 2 tests. One was technical skills, one is workplace readiness, and they had to have a 3.0. So in 2014, only 30% of our students in career and technical ed programs could meet that expectation. Only one campus had a school support team. So this has been an organizational change, and I'll talk more about it later, but we now have school support teams at all our secondary campuses, and we're developing them for our elementaries as well. And I'll talk more about that in the presentation, why that's important. In terms of staff recruitment, although there was some effort outside of our region to gather students or gather teachers, the efforts were not bringing in enough teachers to fill all the needs that we had in particular. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. And of course, Dr. Delphin's here and he can add a lot more to the efforts that his department has made in making changes in that area. We had limited information to share with parents. Our issue is a little bit different now, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, is we have lots of information to share with parents, but we're not as good at it as we should be. So that's a little different story that we have to begin working on. And then we had limited community partnerships, and that was one of the things, that, again, that Mr. Swarzak pointed out to us and continues to help push us on, is improving those partnership opportunities for kids. So where are we now? I think. Gonna move? Sorry. Go up one. What did I do, freeze it? Well, there you go. We're going to talk about technology too, so you can see that even here we have issues with technology. If you can just okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about how the individual student experience is different, and when the slides come up, we'll go back to them. What's different for our students now is that we expect them to have a partnership with our, perfect. That'll work perfect, AJ. You can just slide that along as we go. Again, this is difficult to read, but I think I can carry the conversation for you. What's different for our students is that there are a multitude of points of expertise that every student needs to have. So we know that we want the teacher to explain deeply what's required in each unit of study. And there's a learning guide to help provide support with that. We want a student to be able to tell us every time where they are, what's required in the unit, how well they're doing, what they need to do next, and have they mastered the material. If our students can say that and do that through each unit of study, we know they can advocate for their own learning, and we know that they'll be successful. We're still working with our students to learn how to do that well. We're working with our teachers to lead and facilitate, because it's a different methodology of teaching. You are truly concerned with the student making progress. We have staff members that are exceptional at this. We have others that are learning and practicing. So we need to continue if we're going to continue to move all of our students. There's some really important data that every student needs to know well, which of course Infinite Campus is their pass rates. We need them to know their graduation pathway. So we know that some students can tell us right now how well it is and others cannot. So one of the great things that's happened is Dr. Medina, working in the IC system, Every kid in the coming year will be able to log on to their IC account. We'll see what their academic pathway is, whether it's a CTE diploma or a Jumpstart diploma, whatever their diploma pathway is. They're going to be able to log on. They and their parents will be able to see their progress, what's been completed, and what they need to do next. So that's a big improvement for them. We also need them to know what the benchmarks are in terms of what are my requirements for every unit of study, as we talked about before. How well am I doing? What do I need to do next? And then any other additional things that kids need to know within the unit. Can they work well with others? Can they develop a common project? All those are all part of the academic experience. So students as self-advocates. When students can ride that wave, tell us what they're doing, they're going to be successful. And a good percentage of our kids are already there. On our next slide is the same story for our teachers. We have an aligned system, as I said earlier. And so in an aligned system, that means that on those same benchmarks, our teachers can now have discussions that they couldn't have before about, okay, these were the expectations, these were the results, these were my benchmark scores, these were the learning targets that went well. We have data sets in Mastery Connect that tell us that when the teachers all give that same assessment and upload it in Mastery Connect, we know in which classes, which learning targets were mastered better, which then fodders the opportunity when they work in professional learning communities to dig deep and move kids forward as a team. So it's a different approach. We know now that our administrators can see the same information. They can know in every teacher's classroom which kids are mastering what learning targets in any given point in time. So that's a significant shift for all of us. And so we're now moving into the realm of away from development and into implementation. Can our administrators tell us which teachers are moving the most students in any given point in time, in what areas, and so on? So that'll be their learning as we move forward. Our coaches, us at the district office as well. So again, moving into a competency model where we're really tracking individual student progress. Okay, thank you. We've had some really positive effects throughout. Now, not every piece of data we have, we've gone uphill in a positive way. There's sometimes we go up, sometimes we go down, but for the most part, our trend is upward. And so here's our graduation rate. So we really need to celebrate those. You can see that the orange is an upward trend of several percent per year, and we're up to 88%, 80% for our district, 88% for Carson High, and 72% for Pioneer High School. And you'll see that those trends are moving upward really quickly, and we need to really kind of celebrate that. This is the most important piece of data we have, and we need to continue to raise that bar until that number gets closer to 95, 96, 97, and hopefully we get to 100. And we're making progress that's telling us the things we're doing are working. They're not perfect, we still have to improve, but the data says it's working.
Steve, why do you think there's such a big jump at Pioneer? What changes have been made there to make a 50% change in 4 years?
They've implemented all the things that we've talked about, and they have really taken to heart that they're going to move every kid. And that is truly part of it. And, you know, they're going to even dig even deeper this coming year because they're partnering with the CTAC. We got a big grant, so they're going to be able to look really closely at the progress of individual students and provide early interventions. And I'm really glad you asked that question because a lot of those kids go credit deficient to Pioneer. So one of the things that's really helped there is Mr. Zona and his team have changed to an 8-period day plus an online requirement, meaning kids can earn 9 credits a year on that campus. In addition, system-wide, we've built a credit recovery component, and I'll talk about the actual numbers when we get to that point. But in essence, if a kid fails a class, they don't have to completely retake the class. In our old system, if a kid failed, their only option was to retake the class. That's not what we do now. What we do is we use competency testing to identify the areas of the course they don't understand, provide them remediation and training on what to do it, and then let them test on a competency model to show that they've mastered those components. And when they've mastered that class, they earn the credit and they can move on. So they're no longer limited to that just seat time option.
And what Dr. Perdera was explaining is that this is something that's allowable in the law that the district just was not taking advantage of. And now we are. And then the other piece to that too is if you look at research and you look at graduation rates and you look at research, anything in that 80 to 85%, anything after that takes more than what you normally do during the school day. That's that social emotional part. That's that really parent support piece, the community piece, the social emotional learning piece, the truancy, the attendance, the law enforcement. That's where there's just other things that you have to add in if you're going to keep those numbers going up.
Does that mean also that we're using Carson Online more than we had before in 2012?
We are
Yes.
using it, yes.
Yes, and we'll
That's what
be
I
able to
thought.
present that data after summer school's over.
Okay.
Great.
So, Steve, I just have a quick question. Do you have any projection on how the changes with graduation requirements for students with IEPs is going to impact that number? Do we have any estimate of how many of those kids we're going to be able to move into that orange bar category?
I don't know yet, so we haven't done the research on that yet, but thank you for your question. So that's one of the first things we'll look at and bring back to you.
And the special ed one too.
We're just deciphering what does it all mean
Right.
at this point.
It's promising.
Okay. All right, Mrs. Kima, we're ready for the next one. So one of the big components is pass rate. So this is last year's data. We're still pulling out this year's data. But one of the neat things that's happened when we took on Infinite Campus, it set us back 6 months in terms of our ability to look at data closely and provide interventions. However, now that it's in place, we're now able to start automating some of the systems that we had to do by hand. And so, again, with Dr. Medina and with Janice Arthur Towns, we've been able to build a system so that the data matrix now operates in real time, and as soon as access is provided to whichever user the school needs, that data matrix is now available within the system. You literally log on in through Infinite Campus, the report comes out, and we're going to be able to track pass-fail rates. In this particular case, we've had this trajectory of improvement in terms of kids passing classes, not carrying Fs. It's been a huge improvement. Now, we still have to pull this year's data. As I told you, we had 6 months where we couldn't check, so I can't promise you right now that the numbers are still as high as they were. But looking at our summer school numbers at both the high school and middle school, the potential is high that we've met at least that bar. So we'll see. Yep. So again, one of the new things since 2012 is all the different data pieces. So we've talked about 2 of them. One is the pass rate in the data matrix, and there'll be a couple more here. So go ahead and click on the next one. So we know that we have rebuilt the curriculum with a new set of standards. That means that over 300 courses at the middle school and high school level were rebuilt. From that, over 3,000 common assessments were built, right? When we talked about Algebra 1, there may be 10 assessments in Algebra 1. Those same 10 assessments are all Algebra 1 classes. So over 3,000 common assessments have been built, and over 100,000 learning targets have been devised to help build the learning pathway for our students over the past 5 years. A significant investment in time and people. And please note that our teachers were the primary developers with the support of the implementation specialists of all this work. So what a professional effort by a great professional group of people that we have in our district. It's phenomenal, a phenomenal effort. You'll see on the right, that's kind of the Mastery Connect component. It's just a reminder of the Mastery Connect concept we talked about a little while ago. We can, in real time, as long as the information is uploaded into the system, know what learning targets have been mastered by every student on every common assessment in real time. So those 100,000 learning targets, we can show progress on those in real time. Our curriculum is posted online, and I'm really excited about this because there's another Race at the Top district in Arkansas that is collaborating with us. They're building the same type of system, and they're doing the same type of thing. They're putting the curriculum online in family-friendly form, like the learning guides. They have a little bit different take on it, but in essence, that's the story that they're building, and that's the one we're building. We want a transparent access for everyone, whether you're a student, a teacher, a parent, or someone out of our community that wants to see what our kids are learning. We want them to have access, and so it's on our website. Now, there is a secure area for our assessments that only our teachers and administrators can access. Okay. We talked about the data matrix. That's our pass-fail, and now that's automated. Okay. And then this is the graduation tracker. So with that, again, this was available every semester for us to put information down about every student. What credits have they earned and what do they need? The whole purpose here was to identify kids early in their high school career who are missing one or more classes to make sure that interventions are happening for those kids. And it provides a view at the school level or the district level of the number of kids who are on time. Now with Infinite Campus, we're currently building the backside of this. So this too, we're hoping by the start of school, will become automated so that anybody can access it at any given time so that we can tell which kids are on target and that every key player, as Mrs. Kima talked about, that 15%, there's a lot of key players that need to see that data to be able to intervene to support those students. And this is one way that we can continue to do that. Okay. School support teams. As we talked about this before, there was one in 2012. That was Eagle Valley because of its status as a low-performing school. We now have school support teams on all 4 of our secondary campuses, and we're building systems to help support that happen in our elementary as well. When the school support teams come together, it expands the resources because there's a district office person, there's administrators, and there's site leaders all come together to leverage resources to help the school. The only way that works is if you have the essential data that we talked about, the data matrix, the pass-fail data, all those pieces. At the elementary level, we had SFA, but that was the only data piece we had. Now with science and math coming on board, they too are going to have the data available, and they too can have a school support team that can be effective and use data to move kids on their campus. Okay. They meet monthly. They develop our 90-day plans. And the team makeup, as I talked about, at our secondary level, it's the principal, district office rep, site administrator, teacher leaders, or implementation specialists, and other certified staff. And the same thing will happen at the elementary level as we kind of move forward. Okay. Jumpstart, AP, and CTE. Now, I don't have all the numbers, and I wish I did, because there's some pretty amazing things that have happened over these years. But just venture to say that we have an increase in the number of AP classes offered and the number of students who are taking it, and it is a significant increase. As you know, Jumpstart College, we now have a group of students who are on their way to have their associate's degree. They'll be entering their second year, and when there's about 20 of them, they will graduate. In fact, probably will receive their AA degree before they walk across and receive their diploma. So that's a pretty phenomenal thing. And we have another class of another 20 kids who are also starting up this year. So that's not as high a number as I hope we see in the future, but it's a great start, and we need to feel really good about those kids who represent themselves well, and they represent our community well, and they get a huge head start in their college and professional career. Career and technical education has also expanded significantly over these years. And if you can pop up on the next slide there. Although it's hard to see, you can see that we've made these huge gains in this process. So we started at 77% of our kids passing the workplace readiness. We're now at 96% of our kids who are passing the workplace readiness test. That's one of the 3 pillars. The second is a 3.0 GPA. And so students must, for the 3 or 4 classes that are in the CTE, must meet a 3.0 GPA. If kids don't meet it, we now have a way, similar to credit recovery, where they can go back, do additional work, show competency in the area, and then raise their grade in those particular classes based on their competency in the particular area. And then finally, on the technical assistance component, we went from 36%, I think that's 36, hard for me. 36, thank you. And then now we're up to 74% of our students passing the technical skills test. Now those tests are rough, I will tell you. Those technical skills tests, you essentially are showing that you are college level competent or community college level competent in those areas. And if you can meet all 3 of those requirements, which 59% of our students in this program did, you'll receive college credits and a certificate on your diploma for this. And this is a really career-ready area. And we've done a tremendous job in our district, and we have outperformed the state in several of those areas this last couple of years, which is pretty phenomenal considering that we're competing against technical high schools. So great hats off to Tasha and Jason and the CTE people on their campus that are running those programs on both campuses. Our partnerships, this is another area we need to be really proud of. So we did have some partnerships when we started this project, but now we have significantly more. Okay? Thanks to the work in Mrs. Lewis's office and the folks that work in there, both with our contractors, our implementation specialists, we've significantly increased that number. We're up to 136 active partners just in that area alone. That doesn't count all the other partners we have already with the city that are not part of the CTE program. So that's a limited report, and it's a phenomenal growth. And those sectors and opportunities for our kids are phenomenal. So hats off to our kids in that area. Okay, recruitment and teacher training. So unlike we've always had, this district has always valued teacher training. And we have had components of teacher training that have been very strong over the time, but it was limited depending on your levels of experience, what department you worked in, and what opportunity you have. Now, things have changed significantly. Okay. So in terms of recruiting teachers, now, Dr. Delphin, please jump in if I miss something here. We are now recruiting on the national level. There's online application, there's national recruiting through Ed Week, and we're changing our hiring practices, as you've heard several of our members speak about before, that they're able to do some interviewing actually right off-site or off-district, so that we're able to bring teachers in that we know, especially in hard-to-fill areas, that will be great candidates for us, and they don't necessarily have to come all the way to Carson City to apply. At the same time, we have raised the bar for our application process by really developing a performance interview process in our district. And so whatever position you happen to be going for our in-district interviews, we really require people to demonstrate that they can do the skills of the job in the interview process. If they can't do it, then we don't hire them, and that's really a big part of this process. We now are hiring early, so Dr. Delphin and his team have looked to move the time back at which we do openings, and we hire earlier because we want to get the best candidates, and we have a great place to work, and it's nice when we can offer that to people early and they are confident to come to us.
I was just going to say, we're Jose Delphin for the record. We're probably hiring all year now. It's not just a season. And I think I said that at the community PLC, where we really don't stop. We're constantly hiring from everywhere at this point.
The other is the training that's job embedded. So remember, with our implementation specialists at the elementary, middle school, and high school level, their role is to provide ongoing professional support to every teacher in those buildings. And every teacher is impacted by those folks on a regular basis, whether that be in the development of assessments or utilizing Mastery Connect or coaching in the classroom or observation and feedback or giving them an opportunity to view other teachers teach, or a whole variety of other things that I can't even think of or come up with right at this moment that are part of the work that our teachers do. The other part is our department chairs. They also serve a role in this because they provide, or teacher leaders or grade level leaders. Professional development isn't what we used to describe as, okay, you're going to go to class today and you're going to sit through this presentation and you're going to go. Professional development is really about building the skills of teachers in the classroom or their professional learning communities or other organizations to help them become better teachers, to help move all students. And it happens often throughout the day, and the way we're organized and structured, it allows for more training and more growth performance of every one of our members. Credit recovery. As I spoke about before, credit recovery is different. So go ahead. So there were 392 high school students in the Carson City School District that took advantage of credit recovery this year. That includes the summer school group. And that was one or more classes that they were able to credit recover. Now, one thing, that's not a happy number for me, because 392 is a number, that's too big of a number for them to have to credit recover. But on the other hand, in the past, oftentimes that 392 became a barrier to graduation. So we are getting better at parts of it. We still need to get better at others. The other is 177 students took advantage of credit advancement. So this is one of those much bigger numbers than we had in 2012. Parent engagement. Again, this area is improving, but we still need to improve more. We have the capacity to have parents have much more information, as we talked about. So we talked about changing IC so that a parent can access it and know if a student is on time for graduation. That door will be open this year, the start of school, we hope. Another is access to Mastery Connect. Some teachers were able to open the door where parents could come in and look at those learning targets, but not every teacher. So we want to build the capacity to open the door in every teacher's classroom so that a parent can take a learning guide, look at the learning targets and the results in Mastery Connect and see what they're doing, but also see the pass-fail rates. So we have things that we're still going to need to develop, but those are part of the story. The other part is this continual engagement, even at the high school level, where we have Jumpstart meetings for parents where we provide a deeper understanding of what Jumpstart is all about, or AP. And those are happening at every building, so the quality of interactions between parents and our organization are continually improving. And so we're trying to look at ways of bringing more parents in and help them become better at supporting the educational experience. This is by far, I would say, as an organization, our weakest area in terms of really helping parents be ready to take on all of the opportunities that our district offers their kids. So it's something that we have to really work with, provide, develop kind of work groups to help us reach out and make that work. Now, we did have a great share out of our person at the high school who is EL. Mrs. Kimo, who is that, our EL person at the high school? Letitia, yes. Talked about how important the learning guides are to her conversation with parents, because she's able to walk through with them what the learning guide requirements are for the unit, and then as parents, they can look through that. That's probably something that we need to consider, not just for our EL parents, but for other parents as well, to help them understand the components and how to use them to drive support for their students. So we're building the system. Now we have to help our users become better operators of the system. Okay? So as you can see, we took a nice 5-year trip. We've accomplished a lot in 5 years. We have a lot more to accomplish, but our pathway is bringing the results that we're hoping for.
Steve, if I can add, the addition of our public information officer will certainly shore up the parent engagement piece, as he is charged with getting more involved with our community.
Yes. And just to shout out, I'm sorry I didn't think of that myself. He is doing an amazing job, as you all have seen the information that has been shared already and the great job that he's doing.
Do we have any questions from the board? Ron?
Dr. Padere.
Yes.
No, it's been an amazing 5.5-year journey. And like you said, not perfect, but we've come a long ways for the students' sake and student achievement. Everybody stayed true to the learner-centered model that meant basically that all of us don't learn the same way. And because of that, we're going to pick up those kids along the way because of the teacher-student partnerships and the learning guides, that we have some tools to recognize when somebody is not learning, and we have to find that way to help them learn. And Ryan, you know, before you even became a board member, you know, remember the conversation, you brought it up, the firefighters in Las Vegas, where a lot of them didn't have high school degrees. You said they were smart, they might have a GED, but they didn't get a high school degree. And that's what I think the beauty of this is, we pick up these people. And those same people in the Las Vegas fire department, that's what we got to get to, because we all don't learn the same way, but what's been put in place is, to me, is just amazing. Again, not perfect, but it is, the foundation is in place to really go forward and build on this one. Now we can build the first floor up to the penthouse now.
Yes.
And at the last PLC, when, and I'm particularly interested in this, and I think probably all of us are, on this teacher-student partnership with the learning guides. I mean, this learning guide is a powerful tool for life. You know, we're talking about learning targets, essential questions, and a way to self-assess. You can build, you can do something in 3-week increments instead of waiting to the end of the semester and find out you failed. But here it is. So, and I ask, and again, I'll just restate it, that sometime in September, if you could bring back, or bring here, the teachers and what that, and students. What is this really, student-teacher partnership, is it working? And in relation to the learning guides. And then we're just going to continue this, so this thing is firmly in place. I just, my hats are off to you. I said this every time, that you stayed with it. You took the lead on this thing. You became the field general, and it's happened. And like you said, it's a lot of people that made it happen.
Yes.
But it takes somebody to be out there to bring them together to do it. It's not easy. Still not. Probably a lot of people that are really happy, because a lot of people like to do things differently. But if we're going for this learner center to get everybody a chance, that, like Ryan, like you said, everybody is smart. We've got to find that way to bring that out and bring them all up. We do that. Plus, what's in place now is for those kids that want more, we have a place to go. We can give them more, so we can do the intervention, plus take them, as far as they want to go. So, for me, just watching what you've done over the last 5 years, what a lot of people have done over the last 5.5 years, is, I think it's just simply amazing. And I just a great big thank you, and 4 gold stars, I guess that's all you get now. So anyway, keep it going. Okay.
Thank you.
Have any other comments, questions?
Well, and I'll just say, you were talking about the students knowing their path to graduation, and it really was about a couple weeks ago, I was having a conversation with a former student, and actually Trustee Schwarzig's granddaughter, and they were explaining to me the ins and outs of the Jump Start program and how they're going to integrate it into their last years of high school, and even some of the politics involved between the staff at the school and what they think. And so, just the fact that they had such deep understanding of that and were able to kind of communicate that with me and give me a good background, I think speaks volumes about that effort to make sure that the kids are really taking ownership of their learning as taking place. So I think that's a testament to the hard work also.
Thank you.
Now, when we say it's not perfect, Richard gave us the ACT results, which are not
Perfect.
Yeah, which are not, yeah. But I think there's hope in there. And when we have the ACT, I would hope you would be there. And let's combine this thing to say, okay, now where do we go? We know we're here. We have core curriculum. We have learning guides. We know how to put this thing together. I guess that's all I want to say. Just when we do that, let's do it together and make this thing, take the next step.
That would be terrific. I just want to let you know that we are going to be working with the university to help us look at that data and look to see what courses kids have taken in order to prepare themselves. So it may be that kids that are scoring high on the ACT, it's because of their placement even in the 6th grade and their work through the system that's creating that. And if that's the case, then we've just got to continue to push more and more kids into those areas. But yes, we'll look at this together and find a way to help move those numbers.
Steve, do we know, since we brought up ACT testing and whatnot, where we are with remediation rates as kids go off to college? I know when we started the grant program, we had a high percentage.
We don't have this year's results back yet at this point to be able to report that out.
How have we been tracking in general, though? Have we been tracking it?
Yeah, they give you a district-wide numbers, so you don't know exactly which school or what demographic or what kind of special population the students would fall into, and that would be, so it doesn't become very useful. because you don't know what your target is. You don't know, I mean, you've got a number here, but you don't know who you should be targeting. You got to use all this other information that Dr. Perdera is presenting to try to reduce that. You know, is it first-time EL learners that are first in their family ever to go on to college? Is it our kids in our AP classes that are needing this remediation? I would suggest that our data is going to start to look different because now our Jumpstart numbers are going to start to show up. And for the partnerships that we have with the colleges where, like WNC, they look at your algebra grade, and if you have a C or above, you don't need to take remediation regardless of what you did on some test. They don't give you the AccuPlacer because they're finding out that that's not the end-all be-all for placement. It's more about how you do in your classes, your work ethic, the content that you're able to show that you know is a better predictor. So as we continue to form those partnerships and drill down to find out what it is to really make that match between college and high school, the remediation rates will go down. It'll still just be a number. We won't know who that number is attached to, except for our district.
Do we have any other questions?
Not a question, just a congratulations to staff and teachers and all of this. When this came up 5.5 years and we had that huge committee that put together the grant application and stuff, and you guys first presented it, and we're just going, okay, that seems like pie in the sky, but it's incredible how much work has been done and how much is on track, and the way that you presented 5.5 years ago, how much is actually done now. It's very impressive, and I don't know how we get that out to teachers and stuff, but we're just very impressed and thankful for their efforts.
Thank you. I like to second that. Our administrators as well, because we wouldn't be here without all of their help.
Well, I think we ought to talk about our superintendent who
Absolutely.
created the environment, you know, just for all of this to happen. And Sue and yeah, you know, all of this, it just didn't happen in a vacuum. It's just like, here it is. Like you say, it's not perfect, but if we were to wait for perfection, nothing would happen in this world. We're moving, and we're moving in a good direction. So,
Thank you, Mr. Sposey.
Thank you. If I could just add one thought. A lot of the things that we do in our business, we do sometimes to get the money. Sometimes we do it because we need to hang on to staff. But in this particular case, there have been real systemic changes in our system. There have been changes of attitudes about how educators look at their jobs. There have been data pieces that have identified real kids that are in jeopardy of not finishing school. And that's the power of this thing. That's where this really has allowed us at any level in our district to pinpoint students that are struggling, that don't have the background, don't have the language, whatever the condition is, and lets us scoop them up. It creates safety nets for students, and whether that's through online programming. We had Brian Sandoval come here, who was a language learner, English language learner, who was struggling with academia because he didn't speak the language. And all of these pieces, instead of just saying, well, yeah, you know, in the older days, I'm going to do my job and give the information out to the student, and if the student doesn't get it, too bad. That's not the thinking anymore. It's now everybody's bought into this system to the point that they know it's their job really to disseminate information and to bring those students along. And we've been successful at a lot of levels. We still have ways to go, but I think people really are convinced that we have the means and the resources to have more students reach that finish line, and that's our job. So yeah, it's been fun. It's been a tremendous learning experience for me. I know our staff members have talked about it, and very rewarding. And I think I see some of that light coming back into the eyes of people that may have been jaded over time just because of the system. And it's gratifying. And of course, our kids are the winners.
I just would like to add that the reports will continue through Mr. Stokes when he gives the strategic plan reports, I believe a quarterly basis. So though we are ending with the Race to the Top report, it will be the Carson City School District Strategic Plan, Learner Centered Model report that will continue to provide you with this type of information.
And this was titled the final report because the grant required reports to the school board. And this is the end of the grant and the end of the required reports. So,
It's not the end, it's just the beginning.
That's right.
yeah, I appreciate you pointing out that this will continue. It'll just take a different format. And I'm grateful for all of the work that everyone has put in and for this. And my children stand to benefit from it because the work has been done just as they're getting to that level. So I know. I really planned that well. So, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 10. Discuss. Oh, was there any public comment on that? Since we don't, okay, there's not much public here. Agenda item 10: discussion and possible action to approve proposed amendments to Carson City School District Bylaw 041, Code of Conduct for Trustees, second reading for possible action. Trustee Casiopo.
Yeah, I'll keep this short unless anybody has any questions, but this is a second reading. And I brought up last time, training in a variety of forms, and we added that in general terms in here under section 1F. And I think for a policy, that's fine with me, so I didn't know if anybody had any questions or concerns about this, and if not, as it's a second reading, it's for possible action.
Okay, and as was presented last time, with those minor changes, a couple words here and there. This code of conduct was in place as of June 16th, June of 2016. So I think we're good to go now.
I would just comment, Joe, that I do like the including and receiving training because that means that now our bylaws are consistent with the new statutes requiring that. So, thank you. If there's no further comment, it is an action item.
So I'll move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees adopt the revisions as presented and approved June 27th, 2017 as the revised date on CCSD Bylaw 041, Code of Conduct for Trustees.
Second.
Motion by Mike and seconded by Stacy. Do we have any further discussion or public comment? All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. And we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 11, discussion and possible action on the following reviewed Carson City School District policy for which no changes are proposed. Policy 218, Internet Safety and Network Acceptable Use, possible action item. Dr. Jose Delfin.
Thank you, President Crossman and trustees, staff. Not much here to report with regard to policy 218, unless you think something needs to be tweaked. Hasn't really been that long. If you look at the revision date, the last time we looked at this was a couple of years ago, so it's fairly fresh. But wanted you to have a chance to look at it in case you found some things that maybe you wanted to change, which will follow in the next agenda item as well.
Does anyone have any comments or questions on this? Okay, seeing none. It's possible action, but we'll just go ahead and move on if there's no public comment on that. Okay. We'll go ahead and move on to the next agenda item. Is agenda item 12, discussion. Oh, do we have to take action on it? Oh, to renew it? Okay. If there were no changes, I didn't know that we needed to do anything.
If there are no changes, no comment, I think you could just state that for the record, and this will not come back for a second reading. It'll just stand with the 2015 15 revision date.
Well, it's reviewed. At this point, we could update it that we reviewed it, but there's been no revision.
That's more correct. Thank you.
Okay. So I guess should we make a statement and a motion to that effect?
Sure.
That we put the date is reviewed? Did you guys get that? Okay. Does anybody want to make that motion?
So I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees approve June 27th, 2017 as the reviewed date for policy 218, internet safety and network acceptable use.
Motion by Mike and seconded by Ryan. Do we have any further discussion? Any public comment? All in favor? Aye, and the motion carries. Okay, now we'll go on to agenda item 12, discussion on proposed changes to Carson City School District Regulation 218, Internet Safety and Network Acceptable Use to include rules of acceptance and responsible use student signature page for discussion only. Dr. Delphin.
Thank you, President Crossman and trustees and staff again. This is a combined combination of everybody's work from the district office down to the school level as well. It's also important that we review the internet safety and network acceptable use, especially as it applies to families. I know Mrs. Kima is chomping at the bit to make sure we get this done. She's saying yes. Jose, get it done. With that, we have Raymond Medeiros, and he's right behind me. And he was one of the driving forces to look at all the different language changes with this committee. Leanne Morris couldn't be here tonight. She was also the other driver. I just happened to just look for editing. I was the Laurel Crossman for this group. But I would think, Laurel, you probably found more than I did. Okay. So Raymond, if you don't mind coming up and kind of explaining what we were doing and why we did it.
Raymond Medeiros for the record. The intention behind the language changes in the document was to basically review the document and make sure that it is in alignment with, what the district learning goals are, to make sure that we're not blocking student access to learning resources. We're maintaining student safety, and also we maintain our legal compliance as well. So that was the intent behind the changes to Regulation 218. So I guess we're kind of looking for feedback from you guys to see if you guys have any input as to some of the changes.
Looks like Ron has
Well, let's get one of the technical things out of the way, the things that were probably not edited. Under the second paragraph, on that third sentence, or the third line, but it should be probably, but not limited to, not, but no limited to. Just change the word.
Perfect.
Okay.
I think that happened.
So I've got a question, though. What, under the unauthorized use, going down to item 12, using unauthorized Wi-Fi hotspots while on campus. Now, talk to me about that. Now, on campus, well, first of all, the word camp, I guess it could be the high school, could be any school then, that's a campus. We have Wi-Fi hotspots?
These are personal hotspots, personal Wi-Fi hotspots that one would bring to the school. They have a tendency to interfere with the district-provided Wi-Fi, so it interferes with the student devices that are trying to connect to the internet, and they tend to drop connections. So although it's not a large problem now, it's continuing to grow, and we're trying to prevent it from becoming an issue in the learning environment.
So okay, it happens now to a minor, it's not disruptive right now, but it could be, is what you're saying.
It has the potential to be disruptive, yes. It's also used to bypass our internet filtering as well. So you can get around the district filtering as a staff member by bringing in hotspots. And that's another reason why we would like to put that into the policy. And so an authorized device would be one that the district provides. A lot of times they're used for athletic events and those types of things.
How would you detect these?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Detect.
Our wireless system actually has intelligence built in, so we can target rogue devices, is what they're called. That's a way for us to track them down. We don't currently have the resources to actively track them, but when problems are reported, that's one of the things we do check.
So, and that was one of the questions I was going to have is if we have technology, or how much it would cost to get the technology to kind of disable those from our campuses so that they're not interfering with the Wi-Fi.
There is technology, however, it's illegal to use. We are not able to prevent Wi-Fi signals from freely roaming the air, for instance. It would interfere with the neighbors. It would cause issues out in the community. So, we kind of just have to locate the device and inform the user.
Do we have any other questions or comments? I found one other typo on page 2. Under liabilities, that first paragraph and the second line from the bottom, the use of district-provided technology, just capitalize district.
Okay, thank you for that.
Does anyone else have anything? This is for discussion only, so we...
Okay, yeah.
Oh, here comes Ron.
Just under system security on page 3, you're going down a couple of sentences. If a user detects a security risk to any district digital resource or communication device, the user must notify a teacher, supervisor, or system administrator within 24 hours. And then it goes on to say, do not show or identify the problem to any other parties. What are some examples of that?
So I think that, risk mitigation would go along with that. If inappropriate content posts, things that would harm an individual that were reported to the administration before it was disseminated out. That's kind of the intent behind that, I believe.
If I could add, there's also in the bullying policy, in case it's a cyberbullying kind of incident, that we have a 24-hour period to investigate and get it going as well.
And my question is just with that, I can imagine that if a student is at home and has that, they're going to go show their parents what possibly are parents included within that? Don't I show or identify the problem to other parties? Or that seems like that would be a reasonable place for a student to take a concern. Obviously, if they're at school, don't go share it with their classmates. Talk to the teacher first, but.
Right, and that makes sense. Maybe we can change that language to reflect that. I think that would be, yeah, that would be a good idea.
Easy enough.
Mm-hmm.
Have any other comments or guidance? Mike?
I guess just one of the thoughts I had is that it seems pretty tough to monitor all of this. And so is this kind of on as it becomes, once the administrator or teacher learns of this, or is there active monitoring that's taking place by somebody in the IT department to kind of look for breaches? Because, I mean, as we know, these things pop up all the time, so.
So from an IT perspective, we look for flags in the system, things that would catch our attention, that would bring us in that direction to look for like a breach, for instance. We don't have the resources internally to have somebody sit there and actively monitor all the traffic running through the network. So in a lot of ways, it is it is reactive. But we are able to track that. So when an issue does arise, we can go back and look at what's transpired.
And one other that I found on the last page, it's the last page, the student signature page.
Mm-hmm.
Just under item 5, there's an extra space after cyberbullying before NOR.
Okay.
Just when I was going through
Correct
that.
that as well.
So,
Thank you.
okay.
clarifications based on Mr. Walker's question. It's kind of like our surveillance system. Nobody mans those cameras all the time 24/7, but we can rewind it so we can see if we have an event that's reported by custodians, whomever, we can go back and rewind it, similar to what you're talking about in tracking the data, right?
Exactly, yeah. That's a good point. Okay.
Very much. Go ahead and move on to agenda item 13. Discussion and possible action to approve Aramark Education as the Carson City School District Nutrition Services Food Service Management Consultant from July 1st, 2017 to June 30th, 2018, with the option to renew annually for 2 years at the cost to the district for the first year in the amount not to exceed $49,044, with funding to come from the Nutrition Fund for possible action. Mr. Andy Fueling.
Good evening, trustees. Andrew Fueling for the record. So I come to you tonight with the third contract year, annual contract year renewal for our services provided by Aramark, which is our food service management company. Just as a little history, back in the winter of 2015, we started a mandatory RFP process. We had been with Aramark for 5 years. We were 4.5 years at that point. And USDA regulations only allow you to have an agreement with a food service management company for 5 years total. They're actually 1-year contracts, and you renew each year. So at that point, we went into RFP process as that 5 years was almost up. And through that RFP process with 3 companies presenting, Aramark was chosen again. So that first year of that new contract sequence was the 15-16 school year. So we're wrapping up 16-17 right now, and now this contract renewal presented to you is for the 17-18 school year here ahead of us. As just a little background on what we do to, I guess, monitor this contract, monitor this relationship. I believe some of this came up when we gave our presentation, our very long presentation back in January, if you remember that. We have monthly invoice meetings where we review all the food costs coming in. Chris Cooper, our nutrition services director, she goes through and is literally looking line by line, checking all the costs that are being added on to the invoice that they provide us to make sure that all costs tie out. We look at data and try to look for trends in what's happening, identify individual schools where maybe some other trends are happening, and try to figure out what might be going on, good or bad. So then we also do quarterly review meetings. So this is actually a mandatory part of our contract monitoring process as far as USDA and NDA are concerned. So each quarter, myself, Chris Cooper, and Mark Kornick, our Director of Operations, meet to review how we feel Aramark is performing in relation to the contract specifically. And then we meet with them and let them know our findings and where we see things are good, where we think there could be some improvement, or where things might be moving backwards. So that's just a constant and busy part of all of our lives. So with that, this renewal contract has been approved by the Nevada Department of Agriculture, which is a mandatory part to bring to you for an approval. They have to approve it before we bring it here and sign. I think the biggest part of all of this is that the guarantee in the contract last year was $249,999. I would say when last year it came up that we didn't want the guarantee to exceed $250,000, they took that quite literally and reduced it by $1 below that. So that I think is the bigger picture. There are some other minor changes, but in total, that guarantee is kind of the biggest piece. So what they're saying is that whatever revenues we bring in, whatever expenses come out, in the end, the deficit will not be more than $249,999, basically $250,000. So the minor changes, and again, all these things are built into that, already represented within that guarantee. With the RFP in the initial 2015-2016 contract, Aramark's actual fees, their administrative fees and management fees, essentially kind of their profit within this, were $48,000. In the 16-17 school year, that held, so they didn't raise those fees. And then this year, they're asking for about a 2.2% increase. So that brings the total amount of fees is $49,044 for the next year. The other changes to the minor changes to the contract, there was language originally put in that Aramark would provide uniforms for our staff, and there's actually kind of a funny little story behind this and how it went awry early on. In the first year, Aramark did this, and at Carson High provided all the staff with these really bright orange uniforms. So a lot of the staff wasn't really excited about having Douglas Tiger colors all over the high school. And so those went away fairly quickly. So after some time, it was decided that within a nutrition department that they have a standard attire, basically wearing kind of polos of the same colors that the students wear. And so we really we haven't required in quite some time to have Aramark provide uniforms. So it's something that we just took out of the contract. It wasn't something that Chris Cooper was interested in requiring of them anymore. There was a removal of language regarding we have this at least twice a year menu advisory committee that's supposed to meet. And basically what it came down to is there's redundant language within the contract. It kind of comes up in two different spots. So it's removing it where it comes up in one of the spots regarding having this menu committee, but it still is in the contract otherwise. The major change to the contract is it has to do with with milk purchases. So the Nevada Department of Agriculture, working with USDA and interpreting their rules about procurement and purchasing, say that basically if you have purchases in excess of $150,000, you need to be going out to RFP annually. At least that's the interpretation that NDA has in talking with USDA, and so that is not how Aramark purchases milk on their end. They get into these massive volume contracts over a number of years and try to smooth out their costs. So it was something that we weren't necessarily in favor of changing, but we really there wasn't a choice to change it. So what is going to be happening is we've already started the process on this. We are going to be running an RFP ourselves for milk purchases, and Mark Hornick, who is well versed in this world, has already kind of started the groundwork on getting this going. So the downside of that is we obviously don't have the purchasing power Aramark maybe does, but there are some other options in looking at what Washoe County School District, who also uses Aramark, they purchase their own milk. They've actually never had Aramark buy milk for them. So we've been in discussions with them, just talking about their process and what they do. And so the downside is we purchase about $160,000 in milk per year. So we just were above that threshold. And so if now by us having to do it ourselves, if those costs go up, that hurts the guarantee. But with that said, for every penny milk goes up, you're looking at like a $5,000 to $6,000 impact. So I wouldn't expect a massive swing in milk. At the same time, it's not ideal. And so it's something that, we had some long conversations. Aramark's legal department had some long conversations with NDA trying to support us to see if there was maybe a different way to interpret that language. But that's just that was the final decision, and that's what we have to run with. So that's really it. So again, within all of that, the guarantee is still at about $250,000, which, for me, it's the bottom line. We're still looking to have improvement as far as meals and participation. This year was down slightly from. I have to look at the final number still, but it looked like it was trending under where we were last year. So as much as a lot of that data in January showed a lot of upward trends the last 2 years, now 2 consecutive years have showed a little bit of a downward trend. So it's something that we're in discussions with them. We just completed a quarterly review that we'll be talking over with Aramark and discussing that concern. But again, with that guarantee standing gives some level of comfort with that. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
So I was just curious, are the fruits and vegetables still included with the lunches for all kids, or do they have to purchase them?
Correct, they are. So I think it looks different at different schools as far as some offer a full-on salad bar and some offer like some prepackaged, like packs of carrots and things like that, packs of apples. I don't know exactly. I know that's been discussed about, are there cheaper ways to make that happen? But that is still embedded within this contract, and it's something that is still continuing on.
Wasn't it something we had a grant for at one time, I thought? It wasn't an Aramark, it was a grant.
We do have a grant at several schools that's called Fresh Fruits and Vegetables, and it stands alone from the Aramark tray that contains this fresh food.
And for those of you not familiar, basically any student at any time can go back up and grab some fresh fruits and veggies that are provided. So regardless, even if they're participating, even if they purchase a meal, that is something that is available to them. So it's a nice benefit.
So we had the changeover from Tim to the new girl. Is that going smoothly? Because that was pretty much the major factor between them and Chartwell's when we had the FRP.
Right. It's gone well. Katie has been doing a great job. She is very active. She's made a lot of good friends in the local Northern Nevada food service community, especially with the folks up at Washoe since they're Aramark. So I think she's learning a lot. She's definitely, it's a different style than Tim, but Chris has been really happy with her so far. She's a good personality within the group. I think, I guess the two things that stand out to me is she really didn't come in here until I think she started the second or third, maybe it was the third or fourth week of October. So there's that transition time between Tim, so that doesn't really help. The other side of it is that with think about this, but with all the crazy weather we had this year and the electrical issues and all that, we had several days where schools weren't serving. So that may not seem like a big impact, but in any given day, we would expect about $15,000 in revenue to come in. So if we have 1 or 2 less days of school, that's $15,000 to $30,000 in revenue that is gone. Yet we're still paying the labor costs, still paying the food costs. It's all been kind of wrapped up. So, well, I think this will be. We do a lot of tracking month to month and try to look at what's happening and really even breaking it down into the schools, the different types of either it's breakfast or lunch, and then within that free, reduced, and paid, and trying to just see what is happening within there and trends. I think the strangest thing to me, I think, that we saw this year is that the number of kids qualifying for free lunch actually were as a percentage were purchasing fewer meals, and that just seems strange to me. But That's something that we've talked about quite a bit and trying to figure out. We plan this summer to look at specifically, because that's been kind of a larger scale thing, but looking at what the schools are and talking to those kitchen managers and seeing what else, does it have to do with the actual entrees being offered, or has nothing really changed in that regard? Is there something else going on? So we're going to try to dig into that a little bit.
And I guess I'm just kind of wondering if maybe the 2 schools that are community eligible, if that's impacting the numbers also, that those kids aren't putting in there or putting in their numbers or whatever. Could that have an impact?
It's possible. And actually, I think the oddest thing this year is with Pioneer becoming community eligible. They actually have really low participation. So you go from one year where meals are, it's free, reduced, and paid, to the next year where everybody can eat for free, and participation basically hasn't moved. And so it's just really that's one school. Obviously not a lot of students, but every little bit helps. So it's one that we have to focus on this year to try to figure out what's going on.
I just had a comment on, you were talking about participation, and this is just a personal, I guess, family experience that we had, and really has nothing to do with the Aramark contract. But just the feedback from both of my children that were 7 years apart. I have one in, and I can only speak for Carson Middle and for Carson High School. They both participated in the food program, or basically bought the meals in elementary school. But my son now, who is going in 8th grade, and my daughter before him, both at Carson Middle and in the high school, the problem they had, they bring lunches now because the lines are so long, they don't, and maybe you've heard this a million times, they don't have enough time to eat. And that's just an experience that they've had.
Yeah, we have heard that, and it's we've heard it at the middle schools, and I know they've tried several things to change that up. One of the things that has actually slowed down the lines is we were, by USDA regulation, we had to move what they call the point of service, basically where the kid types in their code or whatever it is. It used to be it was at the beginning of the line, so it was really smooth. Every time a kid came in, they could type it in and they could go through. Well, you have to guarantee that they're, because we offer kids food, we have to make sure that they actually have all the pieces to make it a reimbursable meal. So the USDA said you have to move these to the end of the line because whoever's checking them out needs to make sure that they have the right foods on there. So that makes sense to me, but what that does with kids carrying trays and all this sort of thing and then trying to punch in their codes, you're juggling, right? So that by itself could slow it down quite a bit. Carson High has been an ongoing issue, and they have rearranged what that looks like. This year they're going to be adding, I believe it's they added one new station right at the end of the year. They're going to be adding another station at the beginning of the year, just trying to create more options, and they're spreading it to the north side, south side. They're trying to spread it out so that when you have all 2,000 kids coming at one time, at least there's more options for them to try to spread out some of those lines. There is the option, some districts specifically will force their high schools to go to 2 separate lunch periods, but that can cause, for the lunch program that can be beneficial, but it can cause a lot of issues within the school itself with club meetings and things like that. So there's benefits, but there's drawbacks to that sort of thing as well.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments or questions? This is an action item.
I move that the Carson City School Board or School District Board of Trustees approve Aramark Education as a nutrition service, food service management consultant for the Carson City School District from July 1st, 2017 to June 30th, 2018 at a cost to the district for the first year and the amount not to exceed $49,044 with funding from the nutrition fund.
Motion by Stacy, seconded by Dawn. Do we have any further discussion? Any public comment? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Motion carries. And we'll move on to agenda item 14, discussion and possible action on a resolution to approve a final amended budget for fiscal year 2016-2017 to include revisions for certified enrollment, audited fund balance, carry forward amounts, and recommended augmentations to specific funds. For possible action, Mr. Fueling.
Thank you, President Crossman. I think we might get you out of here before 9 o'clock tonight, folks. This is a pretty straightforward budget augmentation. So by statute, school districts are allowed to augment their budget any time before June 30th for the current school year. So it seems kind of silly because the school year is essentially over, or fiscal year is essentially over. But so really all this has to do with if there are additional revenues that were otherwise unaccounted for that are going to be spent, it's bringing it to you to give the final kind of within the resolution that is being authorized. So back in 2016, there was a refunding of some bonds, just under $10 million worth of bonds that helped us set up the big $17 million new construction bond. So all this is an adjustment of that debt service fund to represent kind of the innards of what happens when you do a refunding. A large amount of revenue comes in, but that turns around and helps pay off some of those older bonds. So that's really all that is in here. I have nothing else exciting to say about it.
Do we have any questions or comments? Go ahead, Mike.
I was just gonna say, and I was commenting to Mr. Stokes before you got here, that one of the things I appreciate is you've done a really good job this year of kind of keeping us up to date with the twists and turns as the legislature negotiated, and I think that we all ended with a really good understanding of where we are and where we're looking at probably some of the things we're facing in our future. And so I just want to say you've done a really good job with the budget and kind of keeping us all informed, so thank you for that.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Ready to make a motion unless they're there. Oh, anybody else want to? No. Okay. I moved that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees adopt the final amended budget for FY 2016-17 by approving the resolution and instructing the Director of Fiscal Services to file the documents as necessary to comply with NRS Chapter 354.
Second.
Okay, so motion by Ron and seconded by Mike. Any further, Stacy?
Just one question. On the general fund schedule here, we have the projected ending fund balance of 11.9 and then a deficiency of 2.8. Does that come out of the ending fund balance or that?
Sure. There's context to that. So when in the amended budget that was approved back in December, that $2.8 million deficit is what was officially approved. But within that $1 million is contingency that nothing was spent out of that. I think about right around $1 million of that was carry forward dollars, which some of that was spent, but not all of it. And then a large chunk was buying curriculum, buying the new math and ELA, math and science curriculum. So we are not going to have a deficit of $2.8 million. That's what was officially there. It's because of these larger chunk items, but that's not. This doesn't. I don't adjust this from December. So if I had, it would take into account that there's a lot of vacancy savings and things like that. So that's just not represented in this.
So our ending fund balance on our next balance sheet will show 11.9. In the next budget.
It would.
The starting ending fund balance for
Sure.
July 1st, 2016.
So it. No. So where it does show up like that. Sorry. When we just did the final budget in May at the budget hearing, right? So if you would look in those documents, you would see an opening fund balance in the general fund of $11.9 million. So because that's the number I have to run with because of this. But in reality, that is not what's going to happen. It likely won't change much at all with some of the vacancy savings we have coming in.
I have
Okay, Ron?
a question, budget related, but not necessarily this adopted or amended budget. When the legislature finally ended for this year, did we come out with a balanced budget with all the revenues that came in?
So a couple things didn't happen that, so no, the answer is no. So the first thing, our per pupil amount, which is the biggest driver of everything, the number we were working with in the final budget was $7,100. It came in at $7,102. That was not the number I was really expecting. I was expecting it, I thought 7,100 was a little conservative. It was going to come in a little higher. So that, we're still waiting to learn kind of the final calculations on how that came about, because most districts were surprised at the final numbers. The way the funding happened for ESL and FRL students did not come out anywhere near what the discussions were for most of the time beforehand. So we, as it stands right now, wouldn't be eligible for any of that money because it ended up with only in 1- and 2-star schools. And then within the 1- and 2-star schools, I believe it's the lowest quartile of performing students. So that one caught me off guard as well. I think I had a bit of a lesson learned with, hearing the way that folks are talking about it is one thing, but then the way it actually happens can certainly change. So that was one of the biggest pieces. And as far as I can tell right now, I was waiting to hear more about kindergarten class size reduction money. So class size reduction, the way it's written, it only applies to 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade. We do the alternative plan, which applies to 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, but it doesn't apply to kindergarten. So the state had created this other kinder CSR grant money to keep ratios in those classes down to 25. I can't find anything referencing that yet, so I don't know if we could drive our kindergarten classes up to 50 right now if we wanted to.
We don't want to.
No,
Just make sure they know we don't want.
We don't want to go above 45. That's, yeah. So for everyone watching at home, we're not doing that. So at this point, no. At this point, no, I don't believe we have a balanced budget, but it's a little bit better than I thought, than what was approved. I would say that.
I'm just going to reel us back in because we do have a motion on and a second, and we've had some discussion. Do we have any further discussion related to the motion? Any public comment? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Motion carries. Thank you for your information, Mr. Fueling. Moving on to agenda item 15, approval of consent agenda for possible action. Public comment will be taken prior to any action. Mr. Casiopo.
Yeah, Trustee Crossman, President Crossman, I'm going to abstain from voting on this. I have a line item in there from my firm, and since I have a pecuniary interest in the company, can't speak tonight. I just wanted to disclose that.
So thank you for disclosing and then letting us know of your intent to abstain.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
Motion by Don, seconded by Ron, so Carini and Swarzik. And do we have any further discussion? Any public comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries, and Trustee Casiopo abstained. We'll move on to agenda item 16, informational items for discussion only. No action will be taken. Do we have any? We don't have really any informational items, so nothing really discussed there. So we'll move on to agenda item 17, requests for future agenda topics.
And Madam President, I'd just like to restate that at the first meeting in October, if we could have the a sampling of teachers and students from the high schools and both middle schools on the importance and use of the learning guide. And it's going to be under the heading of the teacher-student partnership.
any other requests for future agenda topics?
And then I just like, since the legislature came out with the 2040, I just kind of like to understand that a little bit better, how that impacts our administrators and our teachers in the performance evaluation.
Any other requests? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to agenda 18, adjourned before 9 o'clock, Stacy.